Our representative democracy is not that representative. Things are broken. Alternative voting methods are gaining traction. Ranked choice voting, approval voting, score voting, and my personal favorite, star voting.
Most of us are familiar with choose one voting, plurality voting, it's sometimes called, where you mark one candidate only, but that can put a voter at a serious disadvantage if there are multiple options. What we're looking at is voting methods where even with 3, 4, 5 candidates, 5 parties, we're able to vote our conscience and ensure the equality of the weight of our votes. We propose a number of methods, but our favorite and our flagship is star voting. You're able to score your candidates from 0 up to 5 stars. 5 stars best, 0 stars worst. It's not only familiar, obviously millions of us have rated things 0 to 5, but it lets us show our preference order and also how much or how little we like those candidates. With the 2 highest scoring candidates overall are your finalists, and then your one person, one vote automatically goes to the finalist you prefer. Even if your favorite turned out to not be electable, it's safe to vote your conscience. Your vote ultimately goes to that finalist that can win and represent you best. This is fully legal and viable all around the country. It's already constitutional. There's no reason that we can't just start doing this at the local level, at the statewide level, or even at the federal level.
How can the Electoral College be reformed?
Our nonprofit is explicitly nonpartisan, and I do think this is a nonpartisan issue. The Electoral College is in many ways a compromise that was enacted to keep our country together. There are strong arguments for why it should or shouldn't be reformed. 2 of the most notorious times that the Electoral College has failed to elect the winner of the popular vote, it hasn't just been the Electoral College that was at play there. There was vote splitting at play when Ralph Nader split the vote with Al Gore. The same phenomena happened in reverse with Ross Perot splitting the vote from Bob Dole. So both political parties, both major parties, have lost the presidency because of vote splitting. This is a fundamental flaw in our voting that can be solved.
So let's move on to congressional districts. A lot of people are frustrated with how they're drawn up. How can we reform congressional districts?
Smaller districts have the advantage of making the representative more accessible to their voters. Ideally, they're in the community. They can even run for office with door knocking and a real grassroots campaign, really direct involvement that we want to see. The smaller the districts are, the more gerrymandering can warp those. It's just more lines to have corrupt. There's a lot of talk about multi-member districts or larger districts as a way to mitigate the effects of gerrymandering without addressing it directly. One thing about gerrymandering that's really important to remember is that it operates on a black and white binary, red versus blue. In a 2-party system, that's very easy to gerrymander. Racial gerrymandering, white versus non-white. In a more nuanced spectrum, like an ideological spectrum or a multi-party system, that's actually a lot harder mathematically to gerrymander. Politicians are choosing their voters instead of the other way around. Definitely a holistic approach is needed. It is solvable. There are really a lot of advantages to smaller districts. A lot of people will say that can't be solved, so we just have to have huge districts. I disagree.
The average U.S. representative in this country right now serves approximately 785,000 constituents. That's one person in the House that represents 785,000 people. Do you think they're knocking on all those 785,000 doors? No, they're not. So just kind of keep that in mind. What should we replace plurality voting with and why?
There are a number of voting methods out there. I, like most of us, thought that the choose one voting paradigm was just the law of the land, and that's the way it is. There are other voting methods that have been proposed and that have been used around the world for thousands of years, hundreds of years. Our founding fathers knew that this was an issue that was going to come down the pipe. For people who like a really traditional looking ballot where you just have kind of one box next to each candidate, there's a system called approval voting. You can just approve all the candidates that you like. Another option is using a score ballot, where you're scoring candidates, for example, 0 up to 5 stars. The idea behind all of these is really that I want to be able to vote my conscience, to vote honestly. I don't want my vote to be wasted. I don't want to have to worry about my vote getting lost in the shuffle or something like that. We want our results to be accurate. So that is really where I think star voting tops the charts. You score your candidates from 0 up to 5 stars. The 2 highest scoring candidates overall are your finalists. And then you have an automatic runoff where your full vote automatically goes to the finalist you prefer, and the finalist with the most votes wins.
When you go to the grocery store, how many options do you have for toothpaste? You have like 25. You don't just have 2. People like choice.
St. Louis, Missouri uses approval voting for their local elections. Approval voting's the easy way to do it. If I could snap my fingers today and just say all elections should be one way, it's such a small change that has no drawbacks. But a lot of people do want something more expressive. In the type of world that we're trying to create, where we do have competitive elections with multiple parties, with multiple viable candidates, that's where we really want to be able to show a more nuanced opinion. The voters are actually the legislative branch as well. Because this is a representative democracy / republic, the voters are really delegating their authority to their representatives. So that's where it really, to me, all comes back to ensuring that the voters have the leverage they need to be able to hold their politicians accountable, either vote people in who have that leadership skill set that we want to see in the executive branch, or to vote people out if they say they're going to do one thing and then they do what the lobbyists told them instead. With the current system, and why I keep hammering on this vote splitting spoiler effect root problem, is the electability bias. Currently, if I want to vote for somebody, I have this huge strategic calculation that I need to do. Which of these candidates are electable? Which ones are electable on the opposite side? Which are electable on my side? If you don't vote for the front runner on your side who you think can win, then you risk wasting your vote. Who does that give the power to? People with the best name recognition, people who have the most money. And of course, our incumbents are overwhelmingly much, much older than our average voter. They're definitely demographically not representative. I really strongly believe that empowering voters to vote their conscience is at the root of solving all of these problems. There's kind of an order of operations thing where, like I said, electoral reform is a big puzzle. There are a lot of really important pieces. Certainly changing to a 5-star ballot or even an approval ballot isn't gonna solve it all. But what it can do is it can break 2-party domination. All around the world, countries that use choose one only voting end up in a 2-party polarized dynamic. And that polarization over time gets more and more extreme as voters get more and more strategic and candidates get more strategic, trying to represent one side or the other instead of trying to represent the middle. Candidates who do run from the middle in our current system are at a mathematical disadvantage. They have to compete with people on the left, and they have to compete with people on the right. So for candidates, there's a huge incentive for them to A, try and diversify so that they don't end up having the same message as somebody else and splitting the vote there, but B, be polarizing, be on one side or the other so that you don't get in that middle position where you're having to compete with attacks from both sides. Ultimately, at the end of the day, we're only gonna get one piece of legislation or one set of policy on each issue passed. If we have those consensus decisions being made, then we won't see these dramatic swings where under one administration we spend the first 4 years just undoing everything that the previous administration did and then do it all again in the next 4-year cycle. The first jurisdictions in the country, or really in the world, to implement a voting method that really gives every voter mathematical equality, that was approval voting. And Fargo, North Dakota did it first. St. Louis, Missouri was second. We now are seeing a national movement for approval voting as just a really simple upgrade that ensures more consensus winners. Star voting has really caught on as kind of the successor to the ranked choice voting movement. It delivers on all the goals of the ranked choice community, but also addresses a lot of key issues that really should be solved. One of the things that we don't like about it is that it can ignore a really large percentage of the ballot data. And the fact that it doesn't actually count all the rankings is sort of a workaround that made it easier to hand count 150 years ago when it was first invented, but that is really not serving us anymore. That's one of the reasons it's been really hard hit over backlash around wasted votes, ignored ballot data, and also election security issues, because when you're not counting all of the data, that's much more complicated. So we have had a couple of elections in California and in New York where ranked choice elections were mistallied. They actually put out the wrong election results. With all of the voting methods that the Equal Vote Coalition recommends, whether it's a ranked ballot, a traditional looking ballot, or a 5-star ballot, you're counting all of that ballot data. It's fully compatible with election security and election integrity best practices. There's no centralization of the ballots or anything like that. It's all just addition. And all of them top the charts in terms of representative winners.
As you can tell, all of us on stage here are passionate about this stuff. We could go on for hours about this. All of us believe that every reform starts with voting reform.
You know, a lot of people are really drawn to these sexy electoral reforms, like combat big money in politics. Like
And Citizens United, yeah.
That polls at like 99%, you know, or 95. Politicians don't want to give up their power. I do think it's really important to, step one, empower the voters to hold politicians accountable, and that is with a better voting method first. Once you've done that, all of these pie-in-the-sky ideas that require a constitutional convention or that require politicians to actually be on board with doing their jobs are totally doable because we'll have better politicians in office. There is no shortage of talent. We have bright and brilliant minds. We have a wealth of experience. We also have the enthusiasm of being a young and a new country that has a history of pioneering in democracy itself. You can definitely try different voting methods online. So if you have a book club or you have a local political civic movement, or you have a League of Women Voters chapter or something, go to bettervoting.com, and we have a slick new web app that allows you to pick your voting method, to try it out, to let your voters try. A lot of this is just fear of change. So getting better voting methods used at the nonprofit level and the NGO level and in the private sector or for hiring committees, all of that has a huge impact. So yeah,